He laughed in my face when I warned him about the trap in the contract. "You're just a secretary, not a lawyer," he said. What he didn't know was that for $10, I bought the rights myself, and when he tried to close his $100 million deal, my name was on the line he never bothered to read. He laughed. I can still see the way his tie lifted with his chest, a crisp little flag over a battlefield he thought he'd already won. "The contract has a trap," I told him. "You're just a secretary, not a lawyer," he said, and the room, glass walls, skyline slicing the river, tilted like I was the punchline. I stayed silent. "My name is Avery, 34, born in Ohio, living in a one-bedroom in Jersey City with a plant I keep forgetting to water and a coffee maker that sputters like it's negotiating with God. I was the executive assistant to director Charles Halden, Charlie when reporters fawned, director when he wanted to be taller than the rest of us. People thought my job was to fetch coffee and schedule flights. They didn't see the other part, being the only person who read everything." The morning he laughed, I had almond croissant sugar on my fingers and the contract on my lap, a licensing deal so big the building seemed to hum with it. A smaller biotech, Kestrel, owned a patent we needed. Our shareholders called it the lifeboat. Halden called it a formality. The lawyers had stripped it to bones. Still, bones have marrow. On page 39, a clause sat tucked under a heading that sounded like the world's most boring lullaby, assignment of option upon failure to notice. It was written like someone fell asleep on a keyboard. But I'd seen this rhythm before: lawyers bury an emergency exit behind a decorative fern. If Kestrel didn't receive our formal notice of exercise by a certain date, the option to purchase quietly shifted, automatically, to any authorized agent of the negotiating party who tendered nominal consideration and filed an assignment of intent. $10. 10. Authorized agent. I sign company documents all day. Courier slips, vendor permits, visitor badges, customs forms. The contract didn't say officer. It said authorized agent. I turned the words over in my head like a pebble. Not an officer, not a lawyer, an agent, authorized by routine. By habit. By trust nobody questions until it breaks. "Stop frowning, Avery," Halden had said, breezing past my desk. "Your face might get stuck like that. Print me the talking points for Wednesday." Next Wednesday, the closing. $100 million. Cameras, champagne, and speeches about vision. I sent the talking points to the printer. Then I read the clause again, tasting a kind of electricity at the back of my tongue. Kestrel's general counsel, a woman named Farah whose emails always arrived at odd hours, had replied to one of mine at 3:12 a.m. "We'll need formal notice by end of day Friday." End of day Friday. Our legal department had their red lines due Thursday. Halden liked to skim at the last minute, which meant he'd push, which meant the official notice would slide, which meant the fern hit a door. A door exactly my size. I didn't tell anyone. Not Anna in compliance, who shared her gummy bears with me when I worked through lunch. Not Logan from accounting, who sent me memes that featured golden retrievers in ties. I printed labels, set up a Zoom, and booked a town car. Then, during a grocery run for the office, Pellegrino, coffee pods, those yogurt cups Halden swore kept him lean, I stopped 2 blocks farther than necessary. A notary clicked her pen. $10, she said. I handed her a bill, signed where she pointed, and slipped the stamped form into a manila envelope addressed to Kestrel's counsel. Assignment of intent. $10. The kind of number you forget on a receipt, the kind that doesn't rattle anyone's cage, unless they read everything. That evening, I stood at my window, the city stitched with yellow windows and sirens, my phone vibrating with a delivery confirmation. Farah's out-of-office auto-reply pinged back, "Received." I placed the receipt in a file marked with something only I would understand, Fern. The office grew louder as Wednesday approached. Catering menus. Media requests. Halden practicing the line about democratizing access like he was auditioning for sainthood. He called me kiddo twice that week. I am not his kiddo. On Friday at 5:42 p.m., legal still hadn't sent the formal notice. Someone had tracked changes right through the deadline like it was elastic. I watched the minutes blink out on my screen, swallowing the last of my cold coffee. At 6:03 p.m., the building emptied into weekend laughter and Metro cards. My email chimed. From Farah. No greeting, just a PDF, executed acknowledgement of assignment of option, Avery Cole, authorized agent. The words pressed a pulse against my skin. My $10 had stepped into a room nobody noticed, and locked the door from the inside. On Monday, Halden swept in with a new tie and an old smirk. Big week, he said. Don't mess up my calendar. I smiled and told him his town car was confirmed, the green room would have his lemon water, and the podium mic was tested. I did not tell him about page 39. Next Wednesday at 10 a.m., on live stream, he planned to announce that we had secured the rights. He didn't know there was a different name on that line now, mine. And when he tries to close the $100 million deal, he won't know what's waiting behind the fern. By Tuesday, the office was vibrating like a live wire. Catering trays clattered into the conference room, interns carried towers of branded folders, and Halden rehearsed the line about historic innovation like a Broadway understudy. I kept my eyes on the screen, confirming call times and rerouting his calendar so he wouldn't notice the small storms I was hiding. I had 3. A thin folder marked Fern, locked in the bottom drawer of my desk. A notarized form sitting in Kestrel's inbox, stamped and filed. A knot of fear twisting under my ribs, because if this went wrong, I'd lose more than my job. I'd lose the little dignity I'd managed to protect. Every night that week, I lay awake rehearsing. What will he say when he sees my name on that line? What will the board do? Will they call me a thief? Or something worse, a secretary who got lucky? And yet, beneath the fear was something sharp, like glass catching sunlight, hope. On Wednesday morning, I arrived early. The building smelled of lemon polish and nerves. A delivery man wheeled in crates of sparkling wine, and photographers adjusted their lenses in the lobby. Halden strutted through security, his suit midnight blue, his smirk rehearsed. Avery, tell them I'll be 10 minutes late. Let them sweat a little. I told him, of course, while my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an email from Farah at Kestrel. Subject line, acknowledgement, effective transfer. Inside was a single sentence, for avoidance of doubt, Kestrel hereby recognizes Avery Cole as the assignee of the option rights under Section 39. I stared at my name. My pulse thundered. They hadn't just accepted, they had confirmed. 10 minutes later, the conference room filled with suits and microphones. Cameras winked red. Halden raised his hands as if blessing a congregation. Today, he began, we announce a partnership that will shape the future of medicine. His voice rolled smooth, a man born to believe his own applause. But when he gestured for the contract to be displayed on the screen, the silence that followed was heavier than any ovation. The projector hummed. A single clause glowed in 12-point font, bold as a headline, assignment of option, assignee, Avery Cole. The room shifted. A cough. A whisper. Then Halden's jaw froze in a smile so brittle it might shatter. There must be some mistake, he said, voice tight. He flipped the pages as though sheer speed might erase the ink. But there it was, my name, again and again, legal, binding, undeniable. Reporters leaned forward. Board members exchanged sharp looks. And I sat there, invisible as ever, heart hammering so loudly I thought the microphones might catch it. Halden's eyes finally found mine across the room. No smirk now. Only confusion, and the first shadow of fear. Next Wednesday, he had planned to seal a $100 million triumph. This Wednesday, the fern had bloomed, and the door he ignored was wide open behind me. Halden ended the press conference in a rush, his words tumbling over one another. He promised clarification, blamed clerical mishaps, and waved off reporters like gnats. But the air in the room had shifted. I could feel it in the way the board members avoided his eyes, in the way the journalists clutched their phones like weapons. I stayed still, my notebook open, pen balanced across the page. The perfect picture of a secretary, dutiful, silent, invisible. But inside me, the silence was roaring. When the cameras were off, Halden stormed back into the green room. His tie was yanked loose, his face flushed. "Avery," he barked. "What the hell is this?" I blinked, tilting my head like I hadn't heard. "What do you mean?" He shoved the contract toward me. This. Your name. Do you understand what you've done?" "Yes," I said simply. His face twisted. He wasn't used to me answering that way. I was supposed to apologize, to explain, to scurry. Instead, I folded my hands in my lap. "I read the contract. You told me not to worry about it. So I followed procedure. I signed as authorized agent." "That clause wasn't meant for you," he hissed. I looked him in the eye. It was meant for someone who actually reads the fine print. By Thursday morning, the whispers spread like fire through dry grass. Word of my name on the assignment had reached the boardroom. My inbox lit with messages from people who'd barely spoken to me before. "Can we chat? Quick clarification call? Coffee, perhaps?" The strangest thing was watching their tone shift. Yesterday, I was kiddo. Today, I was Ms. Cole. I didn't answer most of them. I sat at my desk, typing notes for meetings that no longer mattered, while Halden fought behind glass walls. Through the conference room's frosted door, I could see him pacing, gesturing wildly, his voice a muffled thunder. At lunch, Logan from accounting slid into the chair across from me. "What's going on, Avery?" "They're saying you own the deal?" I stirred my soup. "Paperwork. That's not just paperwork." His eyes widened. "Do you understand what this means?" I did. It meant the patent was mine, not the company's, not Halden's, mine. And with it, leverage worth $100 million. But I also understood something else. Power paints a target on your back. And I was sitting in the middle of the bullseye. That evening, Halden cornered me by the elevators. His smile was back, but it had cracks in it. "Avery, let's be reasonable. You don't want this kind of attention. You're a smart girl, you know the board will bury you in lawyers if you try to fight. Why don't we fix this quietly? You sign it back, and I'll make sure you're compensated." Compensated. A bone tossed to a dog. I stepped into the elevator, pressing the button to close the doors. "Director," I said softly, "for once, I'm not the one who needs fixing." The door slid shut before he could answer. That night, I spread the documents across my kitchen table, the city lights blinking through my window. My name gleamed on every page. $10 had turned into a fortune. But fortune was never free. The question wasn't if Halden would strike back, it was when. And I needed to be ready. Friday came heavy with tension. The office no longer felt like the place I had walked into every morning for years. The air was thick, charged, as though everyone was holding their breath. Conversation stopped when I passed. Smiles flickered but never reached the eyes. I sat at my desk, typing meeting notes no one would read, while emails piled higher and higher. Legal wanted to discuss options. PR wanted to shape the narrative. The board wanted immediate resolution. Everyone wanted something, from me. Halden didn't speak to me that morning. He stormed in with his entourage, closed himself in the corner office, and didn't come out. The blinds stayed drawn. I imagined him pacing, shouting into phones, trying to claw back control of a situation he'd mocked me for even noticing. At lunch, I found Anna in the break room, quietly spooning yogurt. She gave me a nervous glance. "They're saying you actually own the rights," she whispered. I nodded. Her spoon clattered against the cup. "Avery, do you realize how dangerous that is? They're furious. Halden especially." I sipped my tea, hand steady. He should have listened when I warned him. By evening, the building emptied. I stayed behind, stacking files, cleaning my inbox, buying myself time. At 7:13 p.m. an email arrived. Subject, urgent. From the board chair herself. Avery, we need to meet. Tomorrow. Offsite. Confidential. I stared at the screen, my throat dry. Tomorrow. Offsite. Confidential. Words that meant they weren't treating me as a secretary anymore. They were treating me as a player. As I walked home through the cooling streets, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. You don't know what you've stepped into. Return the rights. Or it won't end well. No signature. No emoji. Just a threat, plain and cold. I stopped under a streetlight, the city stretching endless around me. My reflection stared back from a shop window, hair pulled tight, shoulders squared, a woman I barely recognized. I whispered to myself, there's no turning back now. And I knew it was true. The point of no return had come. The Saturday meeting was held in a quiet hotel lounge, far from the glass towers of our office. When I arrived, the board chair, Margaret Lang, was already seated. Impeccable suit, steel gray hair, eyes that missed nothing. Avery, she said, gesturing to the seat across from her. Not Miss Cole. Not kiddo. Just my name. Equal, at least for this conversation. She slid a folder toward me. Inside was a draft agreement, transfer of rights back to the company. In exchange, a generous payout. Numbers that would have dazzled me 6 months ago. I closed the folder without finishing the first page. You want me to undo his mistake, I said. Margaret's lips pressed thin. This isn't about him anymore. This is about stability. Investors, employees, the public, we can't afford chaos. Sign this, and you'll be comfortable for life. Her voice was calm, but beneath it I heard the warning, refuse, and life could become very uncomfortable. I stirred my coffee slowly, buying myself seconds. You know what he told me, when I pointed out the clause? That I was just a secretary. Not a lawyer. He laughed. Margaret's expression didn't change. But something flickered in her eyes. A recognition, perhaps, of how many times she'd heard similar words in her own climb. You're not here because of him, she said at last. You're here because you hold something valuable. Think carefully about how long you want to hold it. That night, I sat on my couch with the city lights glowing beyond my window. The folder lay unopened on the table. My phone buzzed again, another blocked number. Tick-tock, Avery. I didn't flinch this time. Fear had burned through me, leaving something steadier. A quiet, deliberate fire. I whispered into the empty room, you wanted me invisible. Now you'll have to see me. For the first time, I felt not just like someone reacting, but someone choosing. And tomorrow, I would make my choice. Sunday morning, the city felt quieter than usual, as though it too was holding its breath. I brewed coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and spread the documents in front of me. Margaret's offer sat on one side, Kestrel's acknowledgement on the other. 2 paths. One easy, one dangerous. The easy path was tempting. Sign, take the payout, disappear into comfort. No more sleepless nights, no more threats. Just safety. But safety came with a cost, silence. Halden would stand tall again, boasting of visionary leadership, while the truth, that he had mocked me, dismissed me, underestimated me, was buried under headlines. The dangerous path was to keep holding the rights, to negotiate on my terms. Risk lawyers, threats, even ruin. But it would mean proving something, not just to Halden, but to myself. I sipped my coffee, bitter on my tongue, and realized I already knew the answer. By noon, I was back at the office. The building was hushed, only the hum of servers and the faint echo of my footsteps. I unlocked my desk, retrieved the folder labeled Fern, and walked it up to the conference room, the very room where Halden had once laughed at me. The board was waiting. Margaret sat at the head, calm as ever. Halden was there too, red-eyed, his tie loose, desperation clinging to him like sweat. "Avery," Margaret said evenly. "Have you decided?" I placed the folder on the table and slid it toward her. Not the transfer she expected, but the notarized assignment and Kestrel's acknowledgement. My proof. My shield. Halden lunged forward, voice breaking, "She's not qualified. She's a secretary. This is absurd." I turned to him, steady. "Maybe so. But I read what you didn't. And I acted when you laughed." Silence fell. The board members exchanged glances. Margaret's eyes softened, almost imperceptibly, before she spoke. "Then it seems, Director Halden, that the absurdity lies in your oversight." His face drained of color. That evening, as I walked home beneath the glow of the street lamps, my phone buzzed with another message. "This isn't over." I looked up at the skyline, at the glass towers where power usually lived. And for the first time, I felt taller than them. Maybe it wasn't over. Maybe the storm was only beginning. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Because the fern had become a forest, and I was no longer just the secretary standing in its shade. The following week was a blur of meetings, calls, and whispers. Reporters camped outside the building. Headlines spun half-truths and speculation. Secretary blocks $100 million deal. Power shift inside Halden Biotech. My name, once tucked at the bottom of emails, was suddenly everywhere. Inside the office, I became a paradox. Some looked at me with admiration, others with suspicion. I caught snippets in the hall. "She outsmarted him. She won't last a month." Halden avoided me at first, but by Wednesday he cornered me in the stairwell, his voice low and sharp. "You think you've won? You have no idea how this world works. They'll eat you alive, Avery." I held his gaze. "Maybe. But at least they won't laugh at me while they do it." His jaw tightened. He wanted to shout, but the cameras and microphones lurking outside these walls had silenced even him. That night, Margaret called. "The board is weighing its options. They don't want scandal, but they can't ignore the fact that you hold the rights. Some are proposing partnership." "Partnership?" I repeated. Her voice was calm. "Yes. You as an independent assignee, licensing back on negotiated terms. It would save the company face, and give you standing." I let the words sink in. Partnership. No longer invisible, no longer just anything. When I hung up, I sat in the dark of my apartment, city lights flickering outside. My hands trembled, not from fear this time, but from the weight of possibility. For years, I had been a shadow at the edge of power. Now, for the first time, I was casting my own. Still, beneath the tremor of excitement, I knew Halden was right about one thing: the world I had stepped into was ruthless. And every step forward meant another trap could be waiting. The boardroom felt colder than usual when I walked in Thursday morning. Reporters weren't allowed inside, but I could feel their presence beyond the glass walls, waiting for any crack of news. Margaret began without ceremony. "We've reviewed the options. The company is prepared to license the rights from you, Avery, under mutually beneficial terms." My pulse quickened. This was it, the moment Halden thought he would control, now turned toward me. Halden slammed his hand on the table. "This is madness. She's a secretary. She doesn't even." "Enough," Margaret cut him off. Her voice was steel. "She owns the rights. The law is clear. Either we negotiate with her, or we lose the deal entirely." For the first time, the room acknowledged me not as background, but as center. I folded my hands, steadying my breath. "I'm willing to negotiate," I said. "But on one condition: Director Halden steps down." The silence was electric. Eyes darted between me and him. His face flushed crimson, his mouth opening and closing with no words. Margaret studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Noted." As I left the room, I caught Halden's glare burning into my back. He had mocked me once, but now his silence screamed louder than his laughter ever had. And I knew, the real climax was still coming. Halden didn't resign quietly. Of course he didn't. By Friday morning, rumors swirled that he was rallying allies, trying to paint me as manipulative, even unstable. He wanted to frame me as a fluke, a nuisance who stumbled into power she didn't deserve. But the board had seen enough. Margaret called an emergency session. When I entered, the tension was thick as smoke. Halden stood at the head of the table, voice raised, insisting, she tricked us all. This was sabotage. I let him finish. Then I placed the notarized documents on the table, sliding them across to Margaret. Calm, deliberate. No sabotage. Just paperwork. Work you ignored. The board members studied the papers, then me. Their faces didn't show awe or admiration, just respect. And that, I realized, was more valuable than applause. Margaret closed the folder. Director Halden, your negligence has cost us more than money. It has cost us trust. Effective immediately, the board accepts your resignation. The words landed like a gavel. Halden froze, then swept his eyes across the room, searching for someone, anyone, to defend him. No one spoke. His power had dissolved into silence. He turned on me as he gathered his papers, his voice low and venomous. You'll regret this. I met his glare with calm. I already regret wasting years being invisible to men like you. That evening, the news broke, Halden resigns amid contract scandal. Reporters swarmed the lobby, but this time, the cameras weren't hunting for his face. They were hunting for mine. And for the first time, I didn't look away. The following week passed in a haze of flashing cameras, phone calls, and headlines. My name, Avery Cole, was suddenly paired with words I'd never imagined: whistleblower, strategist, power broker. Everyone wanted a statement. I gave none. Instead, I sat quietly at my desk, finishing the same tasks I always had: scheduling, filing, answering emails, while the world around me rearranged itself. The board finalized a licensing deal with me as an independent rights holder. A fair agreement, one that guaranteed the company its lifeboat and guaranteed me something Halden had never offered: respect. Halden vanished from the building overnight. His office was cleared, his name scrubbed from the website, his laughter gone from the halls. But sometimes, when I stayed late, I swore I could still hear an echo of it, faint, hollow, already forgotten. One evening, Margaret stopped by my desk. She placed a hand on the folder marked Fern and smiled faintly. You read what no one else did. That's not luck, Avery. That's vision. When she walked away, I sat in the stillness, letting her words settle into me. Vision. Not kiddo. Not just a secretary. Vision. I looked out the window, at the city alive with lights, and felt something I hadn't in years: peace. Not the fragile kind that hides in silence, but the solid kind that comes after standing your ground. My revenge had never been about destroying Halden. It was about reclaiming myself, my voice, my worth, my place. And I had done it not with noise or fury, but with patience, quiet observation, and a $10 bill. The world now saw me differently. But more importantly, I saw myself differently. And that was the victory I had been chasing all along.